Oscar Piastri, Oscar Piastri, Oscar Piastri, Oscar Piastri.
This is the story of how a quiet, unassuming kid from Melbourne transformed himself into one of Formula One's brightest young stars. A boy who didn't grow up on the doorstep of European racing circuits. A boy who started not in a kart, but with remote-controlled cars. Yet within a decade, he would be standing on the same grid as the sport's biggest titans. He's been called calculated, ruthless, clinical, but above all, he's been called the future. His name, Oscar Piastri. And this is his rise. Welcome to Drive, the home of F1 stories that leave tyre marks on your imagination. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and buckle up. Because today we're diving into how Oscar Piastri went from suburban Australian life to shaking up the Formula One world. And make no mistake, this is not just a tale of talent, it's a tale of strategy, sacrifice and split-second decisions that would make or break his entire career. So let's rewind the tape all the way back to where it began. Oscar Jack Piastri was born on April 6, 2001 in Melbourne, Australia. Now, most F1 drivers start with karting before they can even walk straight. Oscar, he started with a remote control, literally. As a child, Piastri wasn't found at kart tracks. He was deep in the world of RC racing, competing at national level events across Australia. Precision, patience, focus. Skills that would later define his driving style were already being forged, not in a kart, but behind the joystick of a 1 to 10 scale car. But then, everything changed. At age 10, Oscar made the switch to karting, and just like that, he was addicted. But there was a problem. Australia, for all its motorsport history, isn't the ideal place to launch a global racing career. Distances are vast, competition is limited, opportunities scarce. So while other kids his age were watching cartoons, Oscar and his father, Chris Piastri, were travelling across the country, chasing races, sleeping in vans, and pouring every dollar they had into a dream that seemed impossible. By 2014, Oscar had proven himself a real threat on the national stage, competing against older, more experienced drivers and still finishing on the podium. But the ceiling in Australia was too low. If he wanted to go pro, he needed to make the jump to Europe. The Piastri family made the bold move in 2016. Oscar was just 15. New country, new circuit, new pressure, and he thrived. Competing in British and European karting championships, Oscar didn't just survive the step up, he impressed the scouts. That same year, he joined Ricky Flynn Motorsport, a team known for grooming future F1 stars like Lando Norris and George Russell. Oscar wasn't just another hopeful kid from overseas anymore. He was on the radar, and that's when things really started to accelerate. – 2016 was a year of transition for Oscar Piastri. He'd left behind the comfort of home, the familiarity of the Australian karting scene, and the friends he grew up with. But sacrifice breeds opportunity. That same year, Oscar signed with Dragon F4, a British-based outfit preparing him for his first season in single-seaters. In 2017, he made his debut in the British Formula 4 Championship. New machinery, new tracks, new stakes. That was the big league, and Oscar didn't flinch. In a grid packed with seasoned European juniors, he clinched 6 race wins and finished second in the championship, just behind Jamie Caroline, who had the backing of Carlin Motorsport. Oscar wasn't just consistent, he was methodical, measured. While others drove emotionally, Piastri was surgical. He rarely made mistakes, and talent scouts took notice. By now, whispers of his potential were echoing through the paddock, but whispers don't pay for race seats. That's when his fortunes took a dramatic turn. Enter Mark Webber. Yep, that Mark Webber. The 9-time F1 Grand Prix winner and fellow Aussie had been quietly following Oscar's progress. Impressed by what he saw, Webber, alongside his wife Anne, took Piastri under their wing and signed him to their management group. It was a game-changing moment, because in motorsport, talent is crucial, but the right backing is everything. With Webber's F1 experience and connections guiding him, Oscar's path to the top had found a new level of clarity. The next challenge, Formula Renault Euro Cup. In 2018, Oscar joined Arden International to compete in Formula Renault Euro Cup. The adjustment wasn't smooth. That season, he faced fierce competition from top junior prospects across Europe. He finished 8th in the standings. Not bad, but not headline-making either. But Piastri's strength? He learns fast. In 2019, he returned to the same championship, but this time with R-Ace GP, a dominant team in the category. And the results? Spectacular. Oscar took 7 wins, 11 podiums, and clinched the Formula Renault Euro Cup title.
Australia have a new rising star, and his name is Oscar Piastri.
Beating French rising star Victor Martins in a battle that went down to the wire. It was redemption and validation. Piastri wasn't just good, he was championship material, and now bigger teams were circling. In 2020, he stepped up to the FIA Formula 3 with Prema Racing, one of the most elite junior teams in the world. It was a pressure cooker. Prema had just won the F3 title with Robert Schwartzman the year before. Expectations were sky high. And what did Oscar do? He won his very first F3 race at the Red Bull Ring. In fact, he led the championship almost all season long. But the battle wasn't easy. He faced tough opposition from teammate Logan Sargent and rival Théo Pourchaire, both of whom were considered future F1 material. The title race came down to the final round in Mugello. Piastri needed to play it smart, and he did, clinching the F3 title by just 3 points. Back-to-back championships, 2 years, 2 titles. Oscar Piastri had become the most talked about junior driver in the world, but despite the trophies and the hype, there was still no guarantee of reaching Formula 1. He was climbing the ladder with incredible speed, but the highest rungs, they're the hardest to grab, and what came next would be the biggest test yet. It was 2021. Oscar Piastri had just conquered Formula 3, but the climb wasn't over. Now came Formula 2, the final step before F1. He returned with Prema Racing once again. Expectations were sky high, but Oscar wasn't intimidated. His competition, Juan Yu Zhou, Robert Schwartzman, Dan Ticktum, and a host of other experienced drivers. Most had already spent a season or more in F2. But Oscar, he was a rookie. And yet, he delivered one of the most dominant rookie campaigns in modern F2 history. Round after round, he chipped away at the standings. He claimed 6 pole positions, the most of any driver that season. Then came wins: Monza, Sochi, Jeddah, and Yas Marina. A clean sweep of feature races at the end of the year. By the final round in Abu Dhabi, he was already uncatchable. Oscar Piastri had become the 2021 Formula 2 champion. But here's where the story takes a painful twist. Despite winning back-to-back titles in F3 and F2, something only George Russell and Charles Leclerc had done before him, there was no Formula 1 seat waiting. Why? Because the grid was full. No team had room. Even worse, F2 champions are not allowed to return the following year. That's the rule. So Oscar, the most successful junior driver of his generation, was forced to sit on the sidelines in 2022. No racing, no lights, no engine roar. Just a reserve role at Alpine, and for a driver that lives to compete, it was torture. But behind the scenes, something was brewing. Alpine had long backed Oscar Piastri through their driver academy. In return, Oscar became their reserve driver, attending races, running in the simulator, even taking part in private F1 tests. When Fernando Alonso unexpectedly announced in August 2022 that he was leaving Alpine for Aston Martin, the team scrambled to respond. On August 2nd, Alpine released a statement. Oscar Piastri will drive for Alpine F1 team in 2023. The F1 world cheered, except there was one problem. Oscar had never agreed to it. Just hours later, he posted a statement of his own. I understand that, without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I'm driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I've not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year. The F1 world was stunned. A reserve driver publicly denying a seat. This was unprecedented. What the public didn't know was that Oscar had already signed with McLaren. Earlier that summer, his manager Mark Webber had been in secret talks with Zak Brown and Andreas Seidel, key figures at McLaren. They believed in Oscar's talent and, more importantly, had a seat available. Daniel Ricciardo's struggles meant the team was preparing for change. But Alpine didn't back down. They took the case to F1's Contract Recognition Board, CRB, believing Oscar was contractually bound to them. After days of legal proceedings, the ruling came. Oscar was never formally committed to Alpine. The contract he'd signed with McLaren was the only valid one. It was official. Oscar Piastri would race for McLaren in 2023. And Alpine, they were left embarrassed, losing both Alonso and Piastri within 48 hours. The young Aussie had just pulled off one of the most controversial moves in recent F1 history. Now, he had to prove he was worth it. Oscar Piastri arrived at McLaren in 2023 as a rookie, but the pressure was anything but beginner level. He was replacing fellow Aussie Daniel Ricciardo, a fan favourite and race winner. He was also partnering with Lando Norris, already a proven talent and the face of McLaren's future. The start of the season was rough. McLaren's car, the MCL60, was nowhere near competitive. The team missed key development targets, and Oscar was left fighting in the midfield. But as the season progressed, something changed. The upgrades came at Austria, then again at Silverstone, and suddenly McLaren were flying. And so was Oscar. In Japan at Suzuka, a circuit where rookies are expected to struggle, Oscar qualified second and finished third in the race, a maiden podium in his debut year. Then came Qatar. Sprint race, heat, chaos. Oscar not only took pole in the sprint qualifying, he won the sprint race outright, ahead of Max Verstappen. He followed that up with another podium in the main Grand Prix. In just one season, Oscar had gone from sideline talent to podium finisher. He didn't just survive, he impressed. And most importantly, he earned respect from teammates, from rivals, from fans. This wasn't just a promising rookie, this was a future F1 star in the making. As the dust settled on the 2024 Formula One season, the world began to take Oscar Piastri seriously, not as a prospect, not as a potential, but as a real, tangible threat. His first Grand Prix win came in the baking heat of Budapest, not from luck, not from retirements ahead, but on raw pace under pressure. It was surgical, clean, controlled. Piastri didn't just win, he commanded the race. Then came Baku. Tight walls, zero margin for error, the type of circuit that makes or breaks reputations. Oscar was flawless again, and just like that, he wasn't a one-hit wonder. He was a Grand Prix winner twice in one season. But while the headlines fixated on Verstappen's relentless campaign and Norris's near misses, Piastri was doing something quieter, more dangerous. He was getting better. Each race saw fewer mistakes, tighter qualifying deltas, better tyre management. He became the fourth driver in history to complete every lap of a Formula One season, joining Hamilton, Schumacher and Rosberg. Champions, all of them. And while he finished fourth in the drivers' standings, there was an unsettling realization for the grid. Oscar Piastri was only just getting started. Cut to 2025. The hype machine roared to life in Melbourne, Oscar's home race. But racing at home brings pressure, and pressure bit back. A mid-race spin dropped him to 9th. Critics began to whisper, was he still just a rising star? But then came Bahrain, then Jeddah, then Shanghai. Wins back-to-back, statement drives, no spins, no nerves, just control. And with each checkered flag, something shifted. The media no longer spoke of potential, they spoke of position, Oscar's position. At the very top of the championship standings, McLaren hadn't seen a leader like this since Mika Hakkinen. And Australia, not since Mark Webber led the charge in 2010, had they seen one of their own at the top. But Oscar, he wasn't content with history, he was writing his own. He snatched his first ever pole position in Miami, then another in Imola. Qualifying, once his weakness, was now his weapon. The man who once played it safe was now the one taking risks and winning with them. Behind the scenes, team boss Andrea Stella was clear. Oscar had matured. He wasn't just quick, he was complete. The rough edges were gone, the patience was there, the fire still burning. Through Monaco, Montreal and Barcelona, Oscar held steady, and by the time the paddock returned to Silverstone, the whispers had turned into predictions. Oscar Piastri wasn't just leading the championship, he was becoming the favourite. From sim rigs in suburban Melbourne to leading the most elite racing series on earth, from the quiet reserve of a rookie to the commanding presence of a championship contender. Oscar Piastri had walked a line few ever dared to cross, and fewer still survive. But as the 2025 season reaches its boiling point, one question hangs heavy in the air. What happens if he wins it all? Does Formula One have a new dynasty in the making? Or is this just the calm before the storm? Whatever the answer, Oscar Piastri has already changed the game, and will be right here watching every apex, every risk, every heartbeat. Now, if you want more stories like this, rising legends, behind the scenes rivalries, and the moments that define F1 history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss what happens next. Because in Formula 1, the story never really ends, it just gets faster.